Is there a problem with shaft flex? Now, I think there is a problem with shaft flex across the board in the golf industry, so I'd like to help. Different flexes of shaft can range from ladies, seniors, regular, stiff, and extra stiff. So we have a big spectrum of shaft flexes to start with. The other problem that we have is that there's many different brands that create shafts for golf clubs. And within each brand, they have lots of different models. And within each model, there's lots of different weights. This Diamana is a 50-gram stiff shaft and it bends quite a lot. This Hazardous Black Gen 4 is the same flex, it's a stiff still. However, it doesn't bend as much. It doesn't have as much bow in the shaft when you load it with pressure. So when we hit the golf ball, they bend and release differently to one another to create different heights, flights, and spin rates, and distance and speed compared to each other. But on the shaft, they say the same flex. So say you have a load of stiff shafts and you have a load of regular shafts. They don't sit like this. They sit more like this. There's crossovers. So sometimes you'll have a stiff shaft that plays softer than a regular, and a regular that plays stiffer than a stiff. But on the shaft it says a different thing, which is what makes it a little bit confusing. All I can say on that matter is that we've got a stiff and a regular in the same shaft here. This is stiffer than that, but it's potentially softer than another regular. So not everyone is always a stiff shaft player. You might grab one of these that's softer and lighter, and you might need something much stiffer. You might need an extra stiff in this shaft to make it work for you in a certain scenario. Equally, you might get something that doesn't bend as much and doesn't twist as much, and you might need a regular in that shaft to get the same sort of performance as an extra stiff in another shaft, which is confusing. And all I really want to say there is that if you get the chance, you need to go and hit the clubs. Go to a fitting, try out different heads, try out different shafts, and just see what happens to your ball flight. This is a bendy stiff shaft. And with a bendy stiff shaft, it goes quite high and it hugs the left-hand side much easier. It's on the beach. So this is the same head and the same loft setting. I've changed the shaft, but I've changed the type of shaft. It doesn't bend as much. So when I hit this club in comparison to the first one, it's much harder for it to go left. Now, I did hit that slightly higher on the face, so it's maintained a bit of height. But the fact of the matter is, it is harder to throw that ball down that left-hand side. That's why fittings are so important for every golfer. You don't want to make golf harder than it needs to be. There could just be another option that you could have chosen instead when buying clubs that would have been easier. And then the last thing to add to the picture is that if you change the head, it's going to change what the golf ball does, even if you keep the same shaft on it. If you're looking at golf clubs and you think you're always a 9-degree stiff, you've always used that spec, it might not be the right spec in a certain golf club compared to another one. If you go and pick up a Srixon ZX5 and you go and pick up a Srixon ZX5 LS, they're going to be very different, even though they have the same things written on them. The ball will do a different thing. So the stock ZX5 has a weight at the back, which is going to encourage the ball to go higher, but it does make the club more forgiving. The stock shaft on the ZX5 is a Hazardous Smoke Red. This has a bit more play in the tip and it throws the ball a bit higher to encourage the elements that we're trying to find from this golf club. If you're online and you're looking at the Srixon ZX5 LS, we get the same loft and we get the stock shaft in there. The stock shaft on this one is the Hazardous Black Gen 4. It behaves very differently to complement the forward weight, which is encouraging lower launch, lower spin. So the shaft feeds what the idea of this is. So on paper, they might say the same loft and the same shaft flex, but they do a different thing, which is why you need to go and try them out, get fitted. So a shaft with less bend in it will tend to leave the ball lower and righter. A shaft with less torque in it will tend to leave the ball lower and righter. A heavier shaft will tend to leave the ball lower and righter because you get more weight coming here. It's harder to get the club through, so you leave it back there. If it's faster, it can get through better. It's got a bit more bend and release in the shaft. To simplify all of that information, go to a retailer, pick a club, give it a whack, and see what it does compared to what you've already got. And if they've got good experts and good advice there, they will show you different specifications, different lofts, different shafts that might do better than what you've already got. That would really give you the most information that's relative to you as a golfer.